those chill summer sounds, and here I am doing a video because, god damn it, I haven't done one of these videos for Global in a little while, so now's the time to do it. Hey everyone, Messy Hair Umbra here to talk to you about this week's coming content. Boy oh boy, what a title for a vision card. Yeah, I actually just read it and I'm just, okay. So let's talk about Lotus Mage Fina, Veritas of the Frost, as well as the VC Lewd in the Wastelands. And I'll come back to Fina in a second because she's kind of the major point I want to talk about. And yeah, so VC Lewd in the Wastelands. Sword Warrior, Great Sword, Bow, Glove, Agility up, Accuracy up, Max HP up, Critical Evasion up, Bestowed Effects, Magic Attack up, and Area Attack Resistance up. Looks like this VC has not gotten anything extra from its JP debut. And I have to say, yeah, I mean, so essentially, if you have a really specific combination for this, then this VC is an absolute great one to get. It's a permanent VC, so you don't have to worry too much about getting it. Why am I not showing it on screen? Because I simply do not have it. I think, in general, it's been a really good VC for a very specific group that we're going to talk about that has to do with Fina. And other than that, I can't say that it's an imperative rush for most people yet. So anyway, let's jump over and talk about Frost Veritas. Frost Veritas hasn't really been around long enough on JP for most anybody who have tested him yet. He is a, how do I say this? I'm not going to complain about the design. I've talked about the design. I still think he's a pretty awesome looking battle model, even if it doesn't look quite proportionally to what I would expect. And there's a few things missing, whatever. In general, Ice Veritas is a solid enough unit that basically, like Water Veritas, is probably one of the easier ones to get, just because so long as you're doing your weekly arenas and, you know, it will take months probably for you to get, but your experience should be very similar to Water Veritas. And he does have Curse status effect, which is kind of neat. Speaking of Curse, now we can talk about Fina, and I'm going to include my own experience with Fina and my recommendation of whether to get Fina or not. So Lotus Mage Fina is a permanent unit. She is an FFB unit. She is the second iteration of Fina in Wotv. Yes, that's true. No, that's not true. There's also Majin Fina. Although technically, blah 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 blah. So Lotus Mage Fina, one of her major things is essentially a ranged magic attacker that can fire off heals from a crude distance and cure her status effect, which has obviously been pretty prominent since Sephiroth's come around, and is looking like it will continue to be a thing in the future as more and more characters are starting to show up with the curse status effect and chances of curse being a thing. Curse has been appeared on, for people who are not aware, AC Sephiroth, Ice Veritas, Adea from the FF8 event also is already showing signs of Curse, and I would be very surprised if Curse does not stick to her kit in the future. And last, but definitely not least, also I want to call it right now, Adea is going to be Ice. Let's talk, the last thing is that Ramada, the new version of Ramada, Astrologist Ramada, does have the Curse status effect. So for the most part, Curse looks like it's going to stick around. It is a very powerful status effect still, even with resistance and healing. So yes, Majin Fina, who is not who we're talking about, Lotus Fina here, is a character that is probably going to have a relatively solid, you know, investment into the future. So long as Curse is a thing and new light and dark units can pair with this character and Curse is anywhere in the meta, there's a good chance for this unit to shine through. Because, you know, if you curse your opponent, they curse you, but then you heal it through that curse. That's a big tide turner most of the time. And Fina can also get off some magic shots. We'll talk about mage power in a second with my opinions on that. But if we're talking about the people who are probably the most interested in getting this character and getting her sooner rather than later, anybody who has maxed Advent Children Cloud and is also looking or also has Cypher, this is basically the unit for you. There have been other light and dark comps where people have thrown in new Lucio into the mix or just different ones, but from what I've played against, one of the strongest light and dark comps that can be really problematic to fight against just in a regular arena is this, because Fina stays back, heals. Cypher is very capable of healing down your opponents, even, you know, without a curse status effect. And Cloud is generally good because of the increasing number of mages. So Lotus Fina, best composition does seem to be essentially that. It is not, for people who are curious, necessarily one of or the strongest comp in the game, but it is classified as tier 1. Now, if I can actually pull this up on the screen, this again wasn't something I was going to do because I really am still a little bit angry about the ads that appear on these websites now. It seems to be the thing that they want to do, but here it is. This is essentially the comp that you would be looking to build with White Lotus Mage Fina, Cypher, and Cloud Advent Children, where Cloud is essentially on Great Knight sub, Cypher's on Dragon Vein Knight, and Fina is on Red Mage. You can see the equipment here being generally pretty straightforward. You do need to get Cypher's equipment from the box event, but that feels, you know, relatively easy. Chaos Bahamut is generally a good thing to see here. The Advent Children Cloud one, the FF5 Human Killer one is also pretty good, and of course the new VC. So I'm not saying that this is a cheap composition to build, but if you've already done Cloud and you've already done Cypher, then if you want what is classified to be one of the tier 1 as of JP standards, this is essentially what you are looking to build. And I would say, as far as comps go for cost versus limited stuff, this isn't too terribly much in the way of VC limited. This is a fair amount in terms of character, and it is 3-100 cost characters. Obviously, you're not limited, but you can change it around and mix and match to go with cost limited style events to be successful with these characters. So boom, there it is. Just substitute White Lotus Mage Fina in with Phoebe and you're essentially good. As a matter of fact, there's almost very little to do in terms of changing it. Although I do think that the equipment on Fina is not quite correct, because her with a sword and armor is probably not quite right. Everything else looks right. That not so much. So the equipment, probably you can use your best judgment to assume, you know, odd or equipment like that, as well as, you know, 2 bells. That's pretty difficult unless you're a cheater. All right, with that being said, I have now talked about everything to do with Fina. And I think that Fina is still a good to long-term investment because healers don't happen that often. Especially healers that can get rid of a very key stat effect. Some people have said, well, you know, this character can already do it in the game. Yeah, but Fina has much better stats and a much better kit than most of those. So, you know, up to you. Now, summer units are a thing that is going to happen in the relatively near future. Ramada is going to happen in the relatively near future, but that's not the character that we need to talk about. The character that we need to talk about that is just on the first and last is this character, Shrek. Shrek is a character that for the most part, came out of essentially nowhere, as far as I'm concerned. We'd only heard a mention of her in the story, and all of a sudden it was just like, boom, oh, she's a wind mage. She's coming out. Oh, she can't be the... Yeah, she is insanely. If there is a comp slash character that has appeared in 90% of my matchups, that is a almost guaranteed lose a lot of time for characters that are just a lot of different builds that I have tried. It's this girl versus comps without this girl. She really is the highest of high tiers. I would say borderline, and only borderline, not a mandatory yet, because she can be killed. I've heard it say the truth. There are a lot of people on global who are homing and hawing. Light and dark mains, pretty much Lotus Mage Fina is something that you should get, but everybody else, I would say that unless the beach unit is particularly that insane as maybe an ice unit or something, this is the character to be. I want to say that every single last person should be saving for. Every person should at least try for it. She is from my experience, a miserable character to not have. It's not even like a tier list thing, because yeah, on game 8, she's classified as triple S tier, which basically means she's in the strongest tier imaginable. She's amazing. She's super great. She's up there with the best characters in the game. But truthfully, she extends a little bit further than that, in my opinion, of being a miserable character to not have, and one that, skipping or just not getting lucky on was more painful. So basically, this is essentially the way to look at it. Majin Fina is a really good get, and I think will be really important for the future. That is still my belief, as Curse becomes more and more of a regular thing. But Shrek is my absolute gold standard. This is who you should pull until further notice, and she will be a little bit later than Majin Fina. Probably was pulled a little bit back because she's been incredibly meta warping. I could not imagine there not being another character coming out relatively, and I do say relatively, to address how annoying she is. But given that it's potentially a summer unit into a large batch of, maybe an off collaboration before the anniversary collaboration, and getting close to that anniversary time, Shreken's dominance may continue well into the future. That is my opinion. Hopefully it has helped you plan for the future. And if nothing else, I showed you a build comp for this young lady. Except for apparently it had 2 bells in it. I don't edit the game. Thanks for watching. Later.